Here comes the twist. A villain appears, called a capitalist. He puts the proletariat, that's us, in chains, exploits our labor in pockets of gains.
If we want to talk about Marx's analysis of how a capitalist economy works, and not just his wishful thinking about the future, we have to look at the labor theory of value, from which he derives his theory of exploitation. So the labor theory of value says that exchange value, or market price, reflects, or actually he uses phrases like embodies or materializes the labor input into production. So relative prices are supposed to reflect relative labor inputs.
So if you take a product from start to finish, it's all the different steps of labor that are performed on that product before it's put up for sale that create its value. So this is a concept that predates Marx. It's something that's tossed around by economists to explain the basic question is, where does a good get its value from? Why do we charge the price that we do?
The labor theory of value was one answer given to this great mystery that's been around since the ancient world, which is, why are things valuable? Why is this more valuable than that? You can just draw attention to the very famous diamond water paradox. It doesn't make any sense that diamonds would be more valuable than water, since water is more essential to life. Like, what's going wrong here? And how can we actually figure out why things are valued this way and that way? It's a bit of a puzzle, really. And you find it in Aristotle, and you find it in the late scholastics, you find it in St. Thomas Aquinas.
So he wasn't unique among people thinking about economics at that time and having that style of theory of value. Where he was unique was then extrapolating from that. If value comes from your labor, anytime a capitalist is making profits, he must be exploiting you because your labor has created value and you're not getting the full benefits of that. And that's where his exploitation comes from.
The socialist angle that comes to the labor theory of value is noticing this gap between what the laborer actually performs in the production of a product and what it sells for. And that gap is something he refers to as the concept of surplus value. So the doctrine of surplus value explains where exploitation occurs in the Marxist system mathematically.
Why then is the owner rich? The owner is sitting behind a desk. The workers are doing all the work. The reason this thing is valuable is because the workers are taking their value and putting it into this product.
You spend an hour producing an apple pie versus a blueberry pie versus anything else, they're all going to be worth the same amount. Not just one person, but multiple people. Everybody who works an hour is producing an hour's worth of stuff.
And if you say, well, but machines and raw materials also contribute to output, Marx says, well, I'm counting their value based on the labor that went into them. So he's got you covered there. But of course, there are a couple of tricks that he's covering over here, which is labor theory of value is never going to explain the value of minerals in the ground. It's never going to explain the value of land, right? Because land wasn't produced by labor.
The heart of your theory is exploitation of surplus value. That's a bogus equation. You can't explain value by measuring the cost of labor. That theory of value is lost favor. Value is subjective by every measure. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Modern economists, led by the economists in the Marginal Revolution from the late 1800s, especially 1870s, Karl Menger and others, said, no, it's actually not how much time you put into it. That's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you can produce something very quickly or very slowly. It's about what can you put together that the consumer wants.
Attention! This is not breaking news! Jevons and Menger lit that fuse!
If the consumer likes blueberry pie more than apple pie, that's just it. It's irrelevant how long it took to make. You find a diamond that takes a second to make and people value it a lot. Well, that's going to be worth more than the apple pie, the blueberry pie.
The second thing it's not going to explain is the value of time used in production. So this is the famous transformation problem, or the problem that Böhm-Bawerk roasted Marx over in his critique of Marx.
Now here comes the bomb via von Bonn-Bawerk. He blew up your system, exposed the core work.
You can't simultaneously say that relative prices reflect only relative labor inputs and recognize that production processes that take longer earn the same rate of return per year in percentage terms as production processes that take shorter time. So consider if you take 12-year Scotch and 18-year Scotch, it's the same labor and the same materials go into putting them into the barrels. It's just that you wait longer to tap the barrel that contains the 18-year Scotch. It still has the same amount of labor embodied in it. So the price of those two things would have to be the same, the 12-year Scotch and the 18-year Scotch, if only the labor input mattered. But of course, nobody's going to make 18-year Scotch unless it sells for more, and that is a reward to waiting for it. Now, it's going to sell for more only if consumers value it more, if they think it's better Scotch. But because it sells for a higher price, then producers are willing to wait. But that's a return to waiting, or the time value of money. So labor theory of value can't account for that. And Bombaverick points out that this is a big fudge that Marx performs.
Your theory is a bundle of confusion. Socialism got crushed by the marginal revolution.
You see how it's reverse cause and effect, right? I mean, the point is that a product is valuable, probably because consumers want it or need it, and then that causes entrepreneurs to be willing to expend the resources necessary on wages to involve ever more workers in it. You know, so the value is determining the labor inputs. It's not the labor inputs determining the value. It's just a mistake, really. But, you know, it's very easy for us to sit around and talk about this and go, oh, that's wrong, marginal revolution solved everything. It wasn't so simple in the 1870s because the labor theory of value had made such inroads into the mindset of economists all over the world, mostly through the works of David Ricardo, who really took Adam Smith's point and tried to systematize it, you know, this labor theory of value, that it was really entrenched, and it took a lot of work to discover the replacement theory, which is called the subjective theory of value.
The entire economics profession has rejected the labor theory of value, and we did it more than 100 years ago. Unfortunately, pop culture today doesn't seem to have rejected it.
It's seductive. It's intuitively correct to people who haven't thought about the implications of it, and it still has influence in society. So there are people who say, oh, it's wrong that certain people, such as Bill Gates, makes, 1 billion times more money than somebody else. He's not putting in 1 billion times more work. We need to somehow equalize things because he's not working more at all. Some people work plenty hard and they don't get paid as much as him.
They look and they see exploitation anywhere that somebody's got big profits or anywhere where somebody doesn't earn very much, whether it be a sweatshop worker in Bangladesh or your dealings with Amazon, say.
There's no exploitation if two people arrange voluntary exchange, man, that's not deranged. That bourgeois transaction you diss with a scarf creates benefit for both, so we're both better off.
But the problem is that they don't understand that exchange creates value. As long as it's a voluntary agreement between a worker and a firm, a consumer and a firm, it means both parties are becoming better off as a result of this exchange. Except, I think, kind of programmed into the back of people's minds is whenever they see unequal gains, there's this notion that just something must be unfair or wrong about it. And unless you actually think through the economics, it leads you to making errors.
So there's a lot of implications of this. It can go into policy prescriptions very quickly, and it leads to a lot of, I would say, confusion among people thinking about how things get done in the economy and how much people should be paid, and all sorts of things, including tax policy, redistribution policy, are influenced by this thinking.